Hey, Meredith. Thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Okay. Well, I went to Texas A&M to get my education, and it's a much longer story. But while I was there, September 11th happened, and also that's when the bonfire fell at Texas A&M. And so I made up my mind to travel the world because I didn't want to wait until I was old and 65 to see the world. So I said, okay, I'm gonna take 5 years and travel the world. That kind of turned into 10. I ended up getting my MBA. But I was good. It was good though. Like I learned a bunch of languages. I traveled, I saw the world. I ended up getting my MBA from a university in Taiwan, fully paid for with a scholarship from the Taiwanese Ministry of Education. And then I was like, oh, I'm 30, let me go back to the States and get a real job and, maybe get married or something like that. And so that's what I did. And the road was not that smooth. It was a bit rocky, but yeah, that's basically my background. And I was raised by a phenomenal salesperson. So I feel like I've been raised to be a salesperson almost my entire life. My entire family is sales. And so I naturally fell into that, and it's been a great career.
And I take it you have the adventure gene, taking
Oh, yes.
10 years to travel the world. And
Yes, yes. I got a scholarship to study a year in Argentina for a master's degree in international relations. And then I discovered one on accident while I was in Taiwan. I wanted to go to Taiwan to learn Chinese. So I taught kindergarten and then took a ton of Chinese classes. And then I ended up going to Chengchi Dashui, which is the university there. I didn't study in Chinese though. I did do all my studies in English. I wish my Chinese was that good. And yeah, I mean, my when I came back to the States, like the it was like the tail end of the financial crisis. So what is that,
8.
2010? And my resume looked like a travel brochure. And it was
Yeah.
it was so hard to get a job. And I finally got a job as an intern. So, like, I'm 30 years old. I have an internship for 3 months at this financial firm. And the only reason why I got the job, I think, is they didn't have a posting. I don't think I've ever gotten a job from a job posting. Like, I've never applied to a job. And it's just kind of how things happen. And I remember I took little pineapple cakes and I went in and I said, I really want to work here. I did my thesis on financial firms going to China. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And yeah, I ended up getting an internship there. And then they turned 2 months. And then it turned into a 6-month internship. And then they hired me on for a couple of years. So that's how I came back and got my career started.
And what do you like about sales?
Oh, um, the money's great. First
Yeah,
of
it's a
all,
good thing. Yeah.
you get paid for it if you're really good at it. I think what I like most about sales is the challenge, and it's a puzzle. It's almost like solving a puzzle. And it's not about convincing the other person to buy the stuff that you have. If you think it's about that, I think you just lose. I think it's honestly about caring about the person enough to discover how what you're selling makes sense to them. And if you can find that, then it's a sale you should pursue. But it starts with like actually caring, like actually giving a shit about the person you're sitting across from. And if you do that, you can discover, oh, this product is really good for them and this can really serve them. And then it's easy to convince them to buy the stuff you have. And if you discover, like, actually, honestly, this isn't right for them, if you keep going after that sale, it's painful and you're either going to trick somebody or you're going to lose. So if I'm selling something to somebody and I'm like, actually, what they've got going right now is pretty good and this is going to I mean, I wouldn't buy this if I was them. I just back out of it. So I think it's more about identification of, is this good for somebody? And if it is, and you think it is, man, that after that sale becomes so much easier.
And how long was it before you got comfortable doing it? Because it's pretty different than teaching kindergarten,
It
right?
is. It
Not
is.
much different. It's
It, well, in sales, everybody sits in their chair, so it's very nice because in kindergarten,
they don't sit in
it's
their chair.
they, they're all, and I taught anywhere from, like, when I was in Taiwan, 3-year-olds all the way to 65-year-olds. And so it was just like that. And I just did it because it made the most money so I could learn Chinese, because I felt like that's what I was going to do. And what I liked about sales, I think I became comfortable because my dad was an Allstate insurance salesman. And he had his own agency for 19 years. He is such a mentor of mine still today. I still ask him for advice. And I love the way that he sold. People would come into his office. So I worked at his office because the idea is like, he's totally fine now. He's much older. At the time, he's having heart issues and I needed a job. And so it was like, okay, this is his business. Maybe I'm the person. And he's got 3 daughters. We're all in sales. Maybe I'm the one who helps him or take over the business and things like that. And this actually before I went to Taiwan. And he had a way of selling life insurance that taught me how to approach sales in a completely different way. So, and it taught me to talk viscerally to somebody. So when you sell life, like, no one wants to buy life insurance.
No
Like,
one.
hi, you want to talk about death? Let's talk about death.
Your death.
You want
Right.
to talk do you want to talk about dying? Let's not, and then
Let's sit down, have a cup of coffee.
yeah, you're dead. You're going to give me $200 a month. How does that sound? It's terrible. And I think a lot of salespeople get really caught up in how like their product works, like, and no one gives a shit. Like, nobody cares. So like, if I come out here with charts and graphs of like, okay, this is your life insurance and you put in $200 in a month and then it goes up and then there's variable life annuity. I mean, like, it's confusing. So here's how my dad sold life insurance, and he's actually on, it'd be funny to have him on your podcast. We could do like a duo. He's actually on the Hall of Fame at Allstate Insurance still. His name is on the wall because he asked one question. And when he sat down with he made sure, do you have kids?
I don't know.
Okay, so anybody who has kids understands, and people who don't have kids can get this too.
I get the idea.
The gut punch, right? So he sat down and he would just ask people a question, which is the best way to sell something. Well, what would happen? And he said, never, the funny thing he said, don't ever ask him about anyone's spouse. 50% of marriages end in divorces. People hate their spouses, but they all love their children, right? And he goes, tell me what would happen to your children if you were to die today. I mean, so people start talking. Well, and they're looking for answers, and he would watch them just like go through this and try to figure out what the answer was. And he had the answer, and it was life insurance. So he said, okay, I can sell you life insurance, and that way your family's taken care of. But he put them on this defensive, on the visceral, like where they're holding the ball. And I think in sales, we're very scared to do that. We want to show up and throw up. Show up and I'm going to tell you all this shit that's awesome about my product. But what you really have to do is you have to gather the trust and almost like the ammunition from the other person. And that is, tell me about, such and such. And as they tell you, they start to go, oh crap, maybe I need something to help me with this. And I think that's the essence of sales. It is an emotional experience and journey of empathy, I believe.
Well, what he did is he got them focused on what they really are there for.
Which
They're
is
not
their
there to
family.
learn about how Allstate has better insurance.
Yeah.
And you're right. They don't. Who wants to think about their death? It's like
Nobody.
the last thing anyone wants to think about.
It's a really hard sale, but my dad made it easy, and then he taught other people. He taught me how to sell, and it wasn't about tricking people or convincing them. It was about showing them. And he would, even when I would take sales calls, because I mean, I'm like 24 when I worked for my dad. I was like, oh God, I'm out of college. Like, what am I doing? And I remember he would sit next to me and he would listen to the other person talking, and he would whisper in my, like, I'd have the phone here. He'd either whisper in this ear or write down what I should say. And I was like, that's not going to work. And I would say it because he's my dad and it would work. And I was like blown away. I was like, people would come in angry about their insurance and they would leave with more policies. It was crazy. And so I learned by what he and another guy who I'd love to have on your podcast, Rick Rowland. He was my second sales mentor. And he was such a great, watching somebody who really had done great with their craft. It was so much fun.
Well, I'm also thinking, as a parent, that's your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of parent would you be if you didn't think about the impact of your passing on your children? So
I see. You can't
your
brush it off.
your identity,
Yeah, good point. Never thought of it that way.
because when your kids mess up, parents are very sensitive, not because the kid messed up, but how it reflects on how the parent raised the kids.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, what happens if you do die and you've
I'm a
done
thoughtless
nothing?
parent.
Yeah. How do you confront that? So yeah, it's a very it teaches you that, and my dad never really explained until he got to like what he was going to recommend about like this
The
is
type of
term versus
policy,
variable
right?
annuity, whole life. Like none of it mattered.
Because until they're interested, it's just going.
Hmm. Exactly. And yeah,
It turns into a course instead of a sales call, right? It's like,
yeah,
let me teach
exactly.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And he sold to, I think because he was a poor cotton farmer. That's how he was raised. And he was a sharecropper, which means he didn't even own the land that he was. I mean, he picked cotton when he was like 8 or 9 years old. And what I really loved and appreciate about my dad is that he doesn't see people like the way that he didn't judge them the way that they came in. He always treated his clients so wonderful, shook their hand. He didn't care if they were bankers or if they were like the window washer down the street. He treated everybody with such class.
Now,
So,
how do you apply those lessons to what you sell today?
okay. So I know this is like, I am not in direct sales today. There's a reason for that. I've got small kids, so I can't travel. But I mean, I've had a 20-year sales career. And I everything that my dad taught me about treating people a certain way, and then also really trying to hone in. I had a CEO sitting across from me, and I had this my I used to sell toy claw machines, millions of dollars of toy claw machines. So everyone's like, that's really weird. Like, no, like I have very big clients. I'm not going to name the client because I don't want him to be known, but the company I worked for, NEN, I'll say that, was trying to get this client for 10 years. And then when I started to go after him as a prospect, because there was a $5 million opportunity, my boss was like, you have I have the email still. You have a 5% chance of closing this. I was like, that's great. I'm doing it anyway because I'm in sales and I do things my own way, right? I'm a little bit of a maverick that way. And so what I did is I went to the stores that so this person owns like 1,000 locations. And I knew, so we're talking like big CEO. He was really hard to have meetings with. He would push back at me. He would sometimes not yell at me, but call like, no, we're not making their money there. And this, and I had everything ready. I was like, actually, you're wrong. And I would call him to the carpet. I think he respected me for that because I didn't let him push me around. Like I was very, very forceful with him. But one of the things that I did, and this whole like PowerPoint selling thing has got me completely, I hate selling. I never sell with PowerPoint. If you show a PowerPoint to somebody, they're staring at the PowerPoint. You've lost that human connection. So here's what I did. So I went in and I went to his locations and where he stored the money from his toy claw machines because he ran the business himself. So I have to convince this business person, don't do it yourself, let me do it instead. And so what I did is I got to know people in his organization that my organization didn't take the time to get to know. and they were the COO. I don't know why. Why didn't we ever talk to the COO? So I made sure to talk to him, and I knew that he was going to have to manage it. I found out he was my champion. He was either going to have to manage it or I could. So at that point, he was like, he's like, I don't want to do this. So what was great was I went to probably like 6 or 7 locations, and I took photos of what was currently going on. And then I went to where I want to see the warehouse. And it was a little bit dangerous because the guy who was running it for him at the time kind of knew who I was. And there was one point where we were like in a storage unit, and I was like crawling over games and stuff in a storage unit, and it's in Texas and it's May. And he's like, if I closed you in here. And I was like, oh shit. So I mean, it was just, I was like, God, get me out of here. But I went into the operations where they counted the money, and it was in a room with no lock on the door. And there was a safe in there. And I took video of me opening the safe, and there had to be $25,000 worth of quarters in there. And I sent him that video, and I said, I'm looking through and no one told me. Here's the thing. And you know this too. No one told me to do it. My boss was not like, you should go down to Houston and look at his operations and take pictures of his, like, no, like my boss was like, you're wasting your time. Don't do this. And I was like, I don't know. Let me look under a couple rocks and see what I find. So I go talk to this owner, and I'd already sent him a picture. I go, this is a picture of your safe. This is all of the money in it. There's no lock on this door. There's no cameras. And so what I did is I took the photos and I put them in front of him one by one, because I knew, because I saw him as a human, that he saw his worth as the value of his companies. So I gently put a photo in front of him, and I said, okay, this is what's going on with because it's like, I mean, this guy's really smart. He owns 1,000 locations, but I never let that faze me, because I had information that he didn't. I'd been to more of those locations than he had that year, right? Because he owns 1,000. So I was like, I put the picture down. I carefully orchestrated this, and I said, what's your plan for security? And he was like,
You saw it. You took a picture of it.
yeah. And I'm like, I opened your safe. I had access to, and then when I did, and then I just hit him over and over again. And then I hit him with the other picture, and I'm like, okay, well, what's your plan for procurement? All of your, your toy claw machines are empty. And then I just sat there, and my dad always said, whoever talks first loses. And I would sit there with a pregnant pause for like 2.5 minutes while he was like, I don't know the answer to these questions. And that's exactly when I knew I had my sale. There was a lot that went into it. There was a lot of negotiations. He was a very heavy-handed negotiator. I learned a lot by negotiating with this guy, but I knew then that's when I had sold him.
And how big of a deal was that?
$5 million.
Wow.
Total contract value is $5 million.
And I got to take, that's a huge deal for the company.
It was massive, because we were owned by private equity. They were trying to sell to another private equity firm. And then there was another sales lady. Her name's Heather. God, you should have her on this show. She's amazing. And yeah, we would switch back and forth, and both of us would bring in $1 million, $1 million deals over, just the two of us, just over and over again. And that enabled them to sell the company.
And how'd you come up with this idea? Was it just instinct, or was it?
I put myself in the position of the business owner. If I owned this business, what would stick out to me as, holy crap, I can't have this go on anymore. And so what I wanted to do is unearth what he had. Again, no one told me to do this. They told me to stop. They were like, don't go to
They told you
Houston.
not to do it.
They told me, don't do this. And then it was funny because and I had just started this job. Like, I had started the September before, and this was February. And they're like, oh, they felt bad for me. Like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. Oh, what's she doing?
She'll learn. Let her learn from
No,
the mistakes.
let her run. And the COO at the company at the time was like, he wouldn't even send out people to look at the restaurants to do what was needed to do the sale. So I went to the guy who owned the P&L in that region. His name's Glenn. I love Glenn. And we did it ourselves. I said, how many can you do? I'll do it myself. And I did the surveys for all the stores. I didn't get help from who I should have actually gotten help from, and we sold it. And I remember there was like, I had to change the contract with the organization, our EULA. I'm not going to explain it because it's like kind of boring, but basically I got them, we were supposed to pay the brand $50,000 if we got to a certain amount of stores. And I got them to change it to give it to this franchisee
Yeah.
because it was in their interest for me to sell a $5 million deal to the franchisee. So I was able to give that bonus over. And my boss said, and it was 50 grand. He goes, why don't you just offer 20? I said, because do you think that brand hasn't told that franchisee how much money is flowing through? And if we try to save $30,000, we will lose this deal because all the trust will go away. And so I knew it was almost like letting him know, I'm not lying to you, because he never negotiated on that. It's like he knew the exact amount of money. So if I had walked up to him and said, oh, here's $20,000, that's your bonus, that's all I could get, he'd have been like, I can't trust her. And I was like, I got you 50. And he goes, it was the only thing he didn't negotiate. He goes, okay. And
And
that was it.
when you were going through this, 'cause I'm sure it didn't happen fast. It took time,
A little bit, yeah. It was actually like pretty fast for a $5 million deal.
but
I
still,
started
what?
in February. We set up a trial in May with him with a couple of stores. And I think the contract was signed in like June or July. Like he didn't even
It's
do the
fast,
six
yeah.
month period. I was blown away. I was like, heck yeah, ring the bell.
And did you have any doubt? You must have certainly at first, right? You're
Oh,
trying to figure this out. Is there a chance? Most reps would have sent an email, tried to get a meeting, tried to
I
reason and use logic
I
instead of,
think what I did, here's what I do when I sell. Because you shouldn't, if you're just waiting on like that one big deal to come through, you're dead. Or you might be lucky and it might come through. But that deal wasn't the only deal. Like I had a ton in the hopper. That was just one of them. And I had other deals turn over too. I had another deal that I worked on. It didn't close that year, but it was like a $400,000 deal, and it turned over the next year. But I always had stuff in pipeline, but I always went what I would do every day, because you don't spend 8 hours on it. You spend
right.
like an hour trying to figure it out, and then boom, on to the next, on the next, on the next. So I would pick out from my list of stuff in Salesforce, what's going to make me the most money fastest. That's what I did that day. And then when I ran out of day, I ran out of day. And so I was prospecting or touching, I would cold call. I did not have a BDR or like a marketing, whatever. It was me. It was me. And I loved it. And I mean, I would talk to 25, 50 people a day sometimes,
Yep.
but I liked it. I liked my clients. I even think people are fascinating that I don't like.
And what drove you? I mean, clearly there was money in it, but was it the challenge? Was it
It's a
what?
challenge.
And
It
someone
wasn't
told you
even,
you
I
couldn't
mean,
do it?
I make more now in a like because I work for tech and whatever, but I and then I really liked it when I was right. That tasted so freaking good. I was freaking right and I was bringing it in, and I absolutely love that. And like what was fun was little by little the company like got on board. They were like, "Oh, this is like a thing." And so like my boss was like, I'm like, he was very, because of course like my success is his success, and he got on board, and he admitted, like when he sent out the ring the bell when I won the deal, he attached that to the email where he said I had a 5% chance. So really cool boss. I think Randy Chilton, wonderful dude. I love him so much. He's a great person, great boss. But like the CEO got into it, and he went and met one-on-one with my prospect. And then everybody started jumping on board to help. So at first, everybody was like, she's nuts. And then what was great is like after I closed this deal, there was another restaurant chain that I wanted to get in Iowa. And it because pizza restaurants are really good for
It
toy claw
was.
machines,
Yeah.
right? I wanted to go get this one in Iowa, and like nobody could really get into it. They kind of tried a little bit before, but I had met this lady randomly at a trade show, and I knew that we had like 2 toy claw machines in her restaurant from this brand in Laverne, Minnesota. And so I told my company, I'm gonna go talk. And she's like, I'll set you up with other people in the brand in Laverne, in Minnesota or whatever. You can go out and sell to people. And so I told my boss and the CEO, this is my next business trip. I'm going to go to Laverne. And the CEO was like, let me get this straight. You're gonna go to a lady who has 2 toy claw machines and you're making a trip up there. I said, uh-huh. And he was like, I know. He goes, I know now not to question you. Just go ahead. And within 5 months, Randy and I were presenting to the CEO and we closed the deal.
Nice.
It was so much fun. It's fun. It's so fun. I miss it. I miss it a lot.
And the creativity,
Oh,
the
yeah.
outside the box thinking instead
Yes.
of,
I've always been told I'm too loud. I need to follow more rules. I need to be on time. And what sales did was give me, like, I used to have raging parties in Taiwan and in Argentina, and I would invite people over, and I never, I never really connected that that's actually the piece that lends itself to being a good salesperson, that liking people and inviting them over and feeding them and having fun with massive amounts of people is what you do at a trade show. And not a lot of people can do that. And that's what I didn't realize was like what was naturally me was actually a talent. It wasn't something to be, teachers. I mean, I was a good student
ignored.
or whatever,
Right.
but they told me to, like, be quiet. You're too loud.
Well, you leveraged your strength,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
because that being a connector,
Mm-hmm.
bringing disparate people together and have them
Mm-hmm.
enjoy each other's company and finding a possibility where there isn't any,
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously.
That's fun. I think that that's the most fun part. And then also there's the idea that, you know, nobody eats unless the salesperson can go hunt.
And it's hunt.
In the company, nobody's going to eat. No one eats. The sale of our company was incumbent upon Heather and I bringing in $1 million deals.
Which is, when you look at that market, $1 million is like astronomical.
It is. That was our quota every year. We hit it by October. We had a couple months of
Gravy.
um like of gravy, and then we would move into the next year, and I loved it. We worked as a team. We helped each other out with our accounts. Not all salespeople will do that. And it's also the great equalizer. I would say too, like, I'm not really like, this is a sensitive subject, the female and the business and blah blah blah. But I will tell you that sales is the great equalizer. And nobody could tell me at that company. Like, now that I'm not in sales, I feel like I have to be like even more strategic and think about how to create, like, prove my value. Because again, I have young kids and I can't be traveling everywhere. But it was undeniable where I was before, and with that came a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of power. When you're going out and you're making sales and you're bringing in money, it doesn't matter if you're a girl. Not anymore.
It doesn't.
Doesn't.
Right. You manage it. And this is what I don't understand. Because people always bring up gender, age, race, this background, education. If you can get money,
It
you will
doesn't
be
matter.
loved.
Yes, yes, they will continue to want you to be there. And what's great is that there's not really it's really limitless if you put the work into it. And you also, I go back to just connecting with that person, you know, really figuring out what matters to them. And if you can figure that out, then, especially I love small business owners. They're my favorites. They make decisions quickly
Their
and they're
money.
really smart. Like, I hate to say it, but they're just some of the smartest people I've ever met.
They have to be. It's their money.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right.
And they're like brave, they're cunning, and they can see through bullshit. And if you always apply honesty and come to them, there was one sale where I misquoted what I thought a guy could make off of his toy claw machines. And I realized my math mistake. Like, I'm really good at math, so I was like torn. I was like, I have to call him, I have to tell him. And so I called him and I was like, hey, and I remember the phone call and I was like, hey, I just have to tell you I made a mistake. Like I told you, I think you can forecast this and I made a mistake and it's not. The number is actually this and I'm so sorry. And I understand, I was like, I understand if this changes things, but I got to tell you before you sign the ink. And he signed with me anyway. And the next time he signed and it was a $300,000 deal, because I got all of his restaurants. And the next time he signed the contract, it was such a cool thing because it was at a trade show. I was like trying to get a hold of him. I was like, please sign I was like, hi, I need you to sign this contract. Will you sign it? And he just took it and like true small business, he goes, is all of it the same? Is it what we talked about? I said, yes, sir. And he's like, he didn't read it. He didn't even read my contract. I was
That's
blown
trust.
away. I was like, and it's because he trusted me because I think I called him. I would give him bad news.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, Meredith, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Oh, my LinkedIn Meredith Clinton. And if there's young people in the audience or old, it doesn't matter who, you can certainly reach out to me and ask me questions. No problem.